past doesn't matter. Like you said, we're not going to deny our past. We're not going to look back and see what happened and learn from it. But
Yeah.
the only thing that matters is today
Yeah.
and the future. That's all that matters.
Yo, I'm Bryce the Third.
And I'm Liz McKean.
And you are now tuned in to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. Here we dive into all the recovery stories from around the world.
And we talk about all pathways because there's no one right way to recover.
If you've been with us for a while, you know how powerful stories are. So get ready for your community to get just a little bigger today.
We are so glad that you're here. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. I'm Liz, and I'm here once again without Bryce the Third, but we are going to make him proud. And I'm beyond thrilled to be here with Gail Taylor, who is our guest today. And I'm going to give just a quick intro of Gail, but then I really want her to tell us more about obviously her story as we get going, but even just how she introduces herself, because this woman contains multitudes. So Gail is a person in recovery. Gail is a person who has had many journeys in life, which is the case for so many of us that come onto this into these conversations. She's an author. She's a speaker. She is a songwriter. I'm actually sad Bryce isn't here because he loves talking to fellow music artists. And we're going to hear more about all that she does. But Gail, welcome, and tell us about yourself.
All right. And thanks so much for having me, Liz. I really appreciate this. Okay. I'll start with how I ended up getting here.
Please do.
I was a financial advisor for 25 years. And I loved my job and I was really good at it. Everything was successful. It was perfect. And then when I was 58 years old, I started taking piano lessons. And I had no background in music other than I had gone to concerts when I was in my teens and my 20s, but no background in music. So I'm literally learning the scales. I'm starting from scratch. And I just loved it. And actually listening to music came flooding back into my life. I hadn't even realized I had stopped. But now on the way to work, I was listening to economic books. And so after 2 years of this, I thought, I'm going to retire sooner than I had planned, and I'm going to study music full time. So at 61, I sold my practice and I started studying music full time. I have private teachers. I'm taking courses locally. I studied with Berkeley School of Music, because it's online. And so you don't have to audition. You just have to pay. And so, I was taking bass guitar lessons, keyboard, songwriting, ear training. And 2 years into this and loving it, I thought, I'm going to reinvent myself as a musician. And when I shared that story with folks, I kept getting the same reaction. I kept getting, wow, Gail, that's so inspiring. I'm going to go do something they had put on the back burner. And honest to God, Liz, I kept hearing it over and over again. So I said, the heck with becoming a musician. I'm going to come out of retirement. I'm going to start a business, Gail Taylor Music, and I'm going to become a keynote speaker. And I'm going to use my stories and my music, because it's all inspirational music and it was all designed based on things that happened to me. So I'm going to use my stories and my music to help folks become their best selves. I mean, I've been studying personal growth for 40 years, personal growth and peak performance. So yeah, that's how I ended up. And then I hired an entertainment lawyer. And when I was telling him to set things up, he said, if that's the route you're going to go, write a book. And so I wrote a book and it's called Curveballs. And that's what got me here.
The most perfect name. I'm obsessed. There's just, oh my gosh, there's so much I want to go into. But I think the first thing I want to know, I had this mental image just now of that Forrest Gump moment where he talks about life is meant to be a box of chocolates and you never know what you're going to get. But I feel like for you, it's like life is like a box of chocolates and I'm going to eat every freaking one of them.
Yeah,
because why wouldn't you? Yeah. So have you always, you have a vigor about you that I feel like there's a better word that I'm going to think of later, but like there's just so much life happening. And I know, you know, for me, that was not always the case. Like pre-recovery, you know, I kind of thought that I had this little box that I had to live in. And then later it was like, oh, I can be all these things. All the parts of me are all not only welcome here, but they're what's going to make life so beautiful. So was that the case for you, or did you just come out of the womb like, I'm all the things?
No, it was the case. I mean, I came out of the womb with a type A personality. There's no question about that. But what happened to me was when I was 12 years old, my dad died,
Mm,
and I couldn't cope. Like, talk about trauma. I actually pretended he was still alive for 2 full years. I pretended he was a spy for the government, and they had to say that he was dead so he could go save the world and we'd be safe. But what happened was my mom moved us from a small town to a city. She had
mhm,
6 kids, and she was in her mid-30s. I mean, she told me later that the reason she moved to the city was because she could get a job, and it was her best chance of keeping us off welfare and keeping us all together, right?
mhm.
So we go to this city, and I'm losing it. I mean, it just spit me up. It chewed me up and spit
Yeah.
me out. So what happened was I started to take drugs. I got introduced to drugs and alcohol, and she would fall asleep at night, and I would sneak up. I mean, she'd come home from work, like, one foot in front of the other, exhausted. She'd have supper with us and then go to bed and cry herself to sleep. I mean, she just
Mhm.
lost her soulmate.
Yeah.
So I would sneak out, hitchhike to a seedier part of the city, hook up with older kids, get stoned, and then at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd hitchhike back home. Like, I'm kinda lucky I'm alive. And so that was my that was for all the women listening, you're gonna know what this means. I was also, uh, uh, doing high risk activities at that age,
Yeah.
right? And so this continued on, like, this dysfunction continued on for about 10 years.
Mhm.
About 10 years, I was doing mind-altering substances every day. I quit school when I turned 16. I was out of the home at 18, got married for 5 weeks. Like, oh, that was one messed up kid. And so during that time and up to the point that I hit what I'm gonna call my first bottom,
Mhm.
I very much what you said. I didn't have the bounce in my step and the twinkle in my eye that I got after recovery.
That makes total sense. Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting, you know, when we get sober, I think I guess I can really only speak for myself. I feel like I kind of had the understanding that pre-sobriety was where I was just all wrong and I had to leave that all behind. And it's only as time has gone on that I've looked back and it's like, oh no, I've always been this way. I just, you know, was using it to survive before, you know? And I'm thinking of like when your father died and you were like, well, how is this going to be tolerable? I'm going to create this story, which was very creative, by the way, you know, and that's what's going to keep me going. And then, you know, even when you were in the city and you're struggling, you're like, how am I going to make this tolerable? I'm going to find a thing that makes me feel better. And you went out and found it and you found ways to get a hold of it. And I think those are the same things, those same drives, those same like creative, inventive type A, like get out of my way, I'm going to fix this thing drives that on the other side allow us to be keynote speakers and songwriters and change the world in a million ways. So it's just like you gotta go through that hard time to get there, but it's still us. Like it was us on both sides of it.
Absolutely. I know, and I call the book Curveballs because I always say it's not the curveballs that life throws at you, it's what you do with them.
Oh yes.
And there are so many I'll tell you how I designed this thing. I told a personal story, a curveball that life threw at me, right? And
Hmm.
whether it was death or addiction or kids with addiction, like I told you a story about a curveball that life threw with me, and then I shared the tools that I use to get through that. And then at the end of every chapter, there's a QR code so you can scan it and it'll take you to YouTube so you can watch the video and listen to the song that was inspired by that story. So I put a soundtrack in my book.
That is the coolest thing. That is like, it's like create your own adventure with actual tools to take the adventure.
I love technology. We're in a really cool era.
That is so cool. That when did your book come out? How long ago was that dropped?
In November, so it's only been out for a couple of months.
Okay, so people can still find, I mean, we're gonna drop links and everything in the show notes, but like people can still find it pretty easily, right? Because they're
Oh,
probably
yeah.
already
I
Googling for
mean,
it.
yeah, where you are, Amazon and Barnes& and Noble,
Okay,
right? Online, if you both of them would would
yeah.
would have it
Where
easily,
are
yeah.
you?
I'm in, Canada. I'm in Alberta,
Oh,
so
okay.
just north of Montana.
Gotcha. Oh, nice. Oh, I'm a little jealous. Well, that's really cool. So,
Where
all
are
right,
you? What state are you in?
I'm in upstate New York. So I'm not
What
actually all that far from Canada, a different part of Canada. I'm in Rochester, so about hour and a half from
Yeah, I know where you are. I
Toronto.
went
Yeah,
to
yeah.
a piano camp once there,
No
and
kidding.
I went on a tour of the, university, the music school that's there.
Yeah. Oh,
Eastman? Is it E
Eastman. Oh
it
my
yeah,
God. Yeah, yeah. I can walk there from where I am right now. That's so
right.
cool. It's a
I've been
very
in your neck of the woods.
I love it. Yeah, it's a very arty place, which is
Nice.
incredibly cool. Yeah, there's a lot of culture in this little and I'm from here, but I left for about 8 years. Actually, I left for longer than that because I went to another part of New York, and then I was in Tampa for the last 8 years with my husband, and now we're back. And even though I grew up here, it's still like now I see it through the eyes of who I am now, and
Right.
it's a whole new experience. I can appreciate it in a way that I couldn't before, which is really
Nice.
exciting. Yeah.
Well, the city that we moved to was Ottawa, so I used to live just north of you, and
Oh
then
yeah.
I moved across the country in 1990.
Cool. So, how many times would you say you've reinvented yourself?
I don't know, a few.
1,000.
I don't think I got the well, and it's funny because when we're talking about addiction and recovery and stuff, eh, the like, for me, I reinvented myself because I wanted to.
Mhm.
But a lot of people have to look at what COVID did, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people had to reinvent themselves because of COVID, because industries shifted, jobs were lost. Well, when you first go into recovery, you have to reinvent yourself because you're not going to continue to be that person,
Yeah. So
right? And
true.
so a lot of people end up going into that reinvention and I say, I already said what I think about curveballs, but everything's an opportunity. So
Yeah.
if all of a sudden you're in a situation where, you lost your job for whatever reason, okay, how do I go find that job that I'm going to be passionate and is going to give me purpose? And this is a good thing, right? We're moving on to the next chapter, as you said.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that framing is it's all we have, because there's so many things that we can't control. And those curveballs, they're going to come. We're not the ones necessarily throwing the curveball that's coming our way. So, yeah, what you do with it is and how you view it.
And the past doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're not going to deny our past. We're not going to look back and see what happened and learn from it. But
Yeah.
the only thing that matters is today
Yeah.
and the future. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And so that's what, it doesn't, and I don't care how old you are either. I mean, I started that business at 65. I
Wow.
came out of retirement 7 years after I went into retirement.
That is
Or no, it was about 5. I retired at 61 and came out of retirement at 65.
Why not? Because why not? Because you got this new thing. I mean, if it's exciting for you, like it's all just it's life. It's just all life.
It's just all life, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I talk about in the book, especially when it comes to jobs, is that,
Hmm.
we spend 50% of our waking hours at our job.
Yeah.
And so your job is equally as important as your personal life. And it's very important that you design it. You design your own life and you design it the way that you want it, not the way that the universe is throwing it at you. You
Yeah.
decide how it is that you want it based on your likes and dislikes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we really get that message that's allowed, to do that.
I hear that all the time. I call it settling. People
Yeah.
settle. And I say,
Yeah.
you don't settle. Don't ever settle. Do it. And it's not that hard to figure it out. I mean, sit down with a pen and a paper and make a list of all the things that you really like to do. And
Yeah.
if the things you really like to do are, walk the dog or go to the dog park or, uh, spend time with animals, let's just stay on the animal thing. If that's what you want to do, then go get a job in that industry. Start looking at what's available. Can you retrain to be a vet assistant or even a vet? Go back to school and be a vet or work in a grooming shop or I mean, animals right now are people's children. We love them. And so I know. And so it's not that hard. I actually walk through an exercise of doing it in my book, how you can figure out what it is. And then I've had people say to me, "Well, yeah, but it doesn't count if you're a single mom and you have 3 kids and you have to pay the rent and put the groceries on the table." And my answer to that is if you're a single mom and you have 3 kids and you're in a dead end job that you don't like, that you don't have autonomy, that you're not being treated well, then when you get home, you're putting one foot in front of the other and walking in the door drained
Hmm.
because 8 hours of that atmosphere will drain you. And if that's what you're doing, then your 3 kids are getting the leftover.
Hmm.
I used to, because 'cause I'm a type A workaholic, my husband had phoned me, I go to work 10 or 12 hours, and he'd phone me and say, "You coming home for dinner?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And I had this little rule when I walked in the house, I'd say, "Honey, I'm home and I had a hard day. Pour me a cold one, and oh, by the way." And in our life, a cold one was a near beer. In my life, it was, a non-alcoholic beer,
Yeah.
but we would both giggle, and it would set the stage for the evening.
Yeah.
Right? You don't give your family leftovers. You
Yeah.
walk in the door and then I just want to expand on this a little bit because another thing that I'll hear is, yeah, but there's not that many of those jobs. Well, I beg to differ because a job that I would love, you would hate and vice versa. And so my example is my son works in pest control.
Hmm.
And he loves his job, and I'm there, "How could you love that job?" And he said, "Mom, you don't understand. When I knock on the door, the person that answers the door, they're as white as a ghost, they're all stressed out. Sometimes it's even from a marginal community, and I'm able to say to them, 'Don't worry. I know I'm going into your house with chemicals for the next 4 hours and you're leaving, but I'll totally respect your stuff. Here's what I'm gonna do. Here's the whole process. When you come back, you'll have your home back, your peace of mind to sleep and not get bitten.'" And their face completely changes, and it's just like he says, "It's so powerful." And I think that's awesome, but that job would be my worst nightmare.
Oh,
Like, I don't
yeah.
wanna be anywhere near cockroaches or bed bugs, but those little critters don't bother him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Something that you might hate, somebody else might love, and vice versa. And so, yeah, just be creative, be imaginative. And I'm not saying quit your job and then, uh-oh, I don't have anything to do. I'm saying on the weekends or in the evenings, start looking into an alternative if you're not happy.
Hmm.
And other people I've talked to that aren't happy, it's not the job, it's not the work they're doing, it's the culture,
Yeah.
right? They're in a toxic culture.
Yeah.
And so I say, still go work for the competition or find a way to get the toxic out of the culture you're in.
I love that. Well, and I also think, the what you said earlier about just take out a piece of paper and write the things that are important to you and that you enjoy. Like that it feels that's one of the this is my favorite kind of thing, the ones that are like, well, duh, but it's like, oh, but yeah, well, duh. Like and also do that because I think we don't especially in this age of my god, I just just can't believe these words came out of my mouth, but like this age of social media that we're in, where we're so influenced, like quite literally, quite on purpose by so many things. There's a lot of voices that are saying, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. This is, I mean, I know there's people that are like, you should have a solid career in a 9 to 5. And here's all the reasons that's the right thing to do. You should break out of the corporate thing and do that, and like all those shoulds are incredibly noisy in your brain and our brains that are already, overwhelmed with so many things. And so to pause that and then to sit down and be like, this is what's important to me, not just, sometimes it does look like I like to hang out with my dog and go to the dog park. Other times it's like, I want someone to look at me like I can help them, like, like your son. I want to, my dad, I know he had a job forever and he worked in a cubicle and went to, work with his lunchbox. And I was like, that sounds terrible. And also he was so happy because he had done the chemical plant Kodak thing and, finally got to the place where he was in this office and he was able to lead people. And he knew that the people that he was managing, were better off because of his like leadership style, and he got to learn things. He got to just feel good he'd come home at the end of the day and have like put in a good day's work. He was in a good mood. He, had energy for his family. And like, that was like this life that he had dreamed of, and that made him so happy. And that's not what would make me happy. And also I'm so grateful that he set that example of like, it doesn't have to look any one way. It just has to look in a way that makes your life your life.
Right.
And
You have your purpose, your
yeah,
passion.
yeah. And to have, to be able to provide for his family was, I mean, I'm so lucky that was a value of his. But like, I think we get so just inundated with what things should look like that it's hard to discern what is ours and what's not. And yeah, it could be pest control. It could be sitting in a cubicle. It could be starting your own business. It could be the 8,000 things that you do every day, and also there can be seasons. I think that's just that I didn't ever know. And then I just did it by accident because that's just who the person I am. And it seems like that's who you are. And the fact that you do it in a way that gives other people permission is just a
And
thing.
and what you just said about the people that are telling you, "Oh no, you should have a steady job," or whatever. One of the challenges with that noise, as you called it, is that they're good intentions. They're people that
Mm,
love you. They're not people that are trying to hold you back.
of
They're
course.
people that believe in you, but they wouldn't take that risk, and they're nervous about it for you in case it's a setback. So
Yeah.
that makes it even more challenging to, "Oh, I don't wanna disappoint my mother, or I don't wanna disappoint my wife," or
Yeah.
because they're well-intentioned, but we all have different personalities. Right? There's
Yeah.
4 personality types and I don't know, 16 subtypes. And some people are perfect, like me, on stage in front of an audience. Other people are better off working on the computer in the back office and doing the spreadsheets, and they love that.
Hmm.
I had so many people say, "Oh, thank God you found your passion after you retired," and I'm there, "Yeah, no." I loved my job. I mean, I was helping people. I was managing, retirement portfolios,
Yeah.
and my whole thing was to help my clients become financially independent so that they could retire on the same lifestyle that they had when they were working. And, I mean, when I did sell my practice, I was managing 130 million, and I sold it for a couple of million, like, and that's the other message I try to say to my fellow recoveries. Don't put a limit on you. Don't say
Mm,
to yourself, because I missed a beat, then I can have this type of a job, but I can't, the sky's the limit. You can do
yeah.
whatever you want to do.
I Can you say more about that? Because I do think a lot of people think, number one, the thing I hear a lot, often calls coming from inside the house, is that, I'm too late. And then also, I think there's a lot of like worthiness, like what I deserve. I know for me, like I'm battling often with like I caused a lot of pain, so I want to, I don't even know, like pay dues or something to like the people I love, to the world? Like, how can I serve in a way that will, first of all, fill me up, but also kind of live my life in a big apology, which is not a fun way to look at living your life. So when you say, when you talk to people like that, do you run into that? Like people that, in the recovery community have a
Yeah, yeah,
worthiness?
yeah, for sure, and people like, the other part of my story was when I hit that first bottom in my mid-20s,
Mhm.
like, I woke up one day and I kinda looked around at the mess I made in my room and my soul, and I thought, "You know what? There's gotta be more to life than this."
Yeah.
And that little bit of hope, that's all it took, that little bit of hope
Yeah.
started me on my next journey, and the first book I bought and read was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I'm sure half of your audience have read it and or heard of it because
I'm
everybody
sure.
has. And so that was where I started my next phase of my journey. I wanna be successful. I mean, he for that book, riches wasn't money,
Yeah.
right? It was the passion. It was going after something. But for me, a dysfunctional 20-something-year-old, it was money. I wanted to be a millionaire. I wanted the fancy car and the fancy coat, and I wrote a song about that. And so but here's the thing, I was still in denial. I still did not know I was an addict.
Mm.
And so what happened was, yeah, I stopped, getting stoned as soon as I got up in the morning, and I also left the chemicals to the weekend, and during the week, I would just, I got a job in investment real estate because people get rich that way. And I'd work 10 or 12 hours a day, and then I'd go to the bar with my colleagues and drink and smoke joints and go home. Unfortunately, I had a 3-year-old son,
Mm.
and so my 3-year-old son was with babysitters and daycares, and in my mind, it was like, as long as he's with people that love him and that are gonna take good care of him, this is fine. This is good parenting. Yeah, right. And so and so, I thought, "Oh, he's got a couple of hours." Quality is more important than quantity, yeah. So so then what happened was this carried on for many years,
Mhm.
and then when he was 12 years old, I moved across the country. I took him across the country, I introduced a new man into his life, a new school, and guess what? Same thing. He went into addiction at the age
Mhm.
of 12 and started going down the same path,
Mm.
and that was actually the first time I really realized that I was an addict, because it was the
Mhm.
first time that I said, "Oh, I'm gonna stop using mind-altering substances every day to help this kid." And so I started reading books on addiction and rebellious teenagers, and when I start reading books on addiction lists, I'm there, "Oh, kinda sounds like me."
I know.
Oh my god, too funny. So, then I bought a book that said, "Are you an alcoholic?" And because when I moved across the country, I no longer had any dealers, but again, I
Mm.
didn't know I was an addict, so I didn't know that would matter,
So when
right?
you say, I'm so curious about this, so you didn't know, like, it had just never occurred to you that, was it
I was
because
the '80s, you work hard, you play hard, you're a partier. I was
Okay.
functional, right?
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
functional.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was one of these people that thought if you were in stage 4 and a rubby on the street and you couldn't keep your job or you couldn't, that's what
That was
made
the
you.
definition.
That was
Yep.
the definition. I
Mhm.
didn't realize all this dysfunction and turmoil that was in my life
Mhm.
was because I was using mind-altering substances every day. And, when you get an adrenaline junkie, put that into the mix, right? The type
Mhm.
A personality, I would go after that through negative ways. I
Yeah.
ended up married 4 times,
Mm.
but I didn't know I was going after it. Like
Yeah.
if you're adrenaline junkies, usually you're like an ER doctor, you go find a job that gives you what you want. Now I get it by being on stage, or after I got into recovery and I was working in finance. Well, that's a pretty volatile industry too. But, I would do things like, go jump out of an airplane. I'd find fun and positive ways to get my adrenaline, I guess is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And
Yeah.
so yeah, what was your question that I changed the subject?
I think I interrupted you because you had said that you didn't know that you were addicted, you
Oh, yeah.
were,
Right.
having this
Mm.
problem, and then but I also want to hear where you go from there. So you were
So
realizing, and that's kind of when
yeah,
things seem to shift.
so my son is in recovery now, and
Mhm.
he's one of my best friends, and he's an amazing young man, and he gave me permission to share our story.
Okay.
And so, one of the things we talk about, because he got addicted to opioids.
Mm,
And so, the conversation is, phew, thank God he got clean when he did, because he would be dead now. Like, that's the conversation we both have with the fentanyl that's out there. And no,
yeah.
we're not supplying it to you.
Right.
With the fentanyl that's out
Yeah.
there, oh my god, the people that are dying, it's just awful.
I know.
Like, we lost 6,000 in 2023. You guys lost 100,000. Like,
Mm,
it's just so sad.
yeah.
And so, yeah, once I got this figured out, and then, one time when he was in rehab, I asked his counselor, I went as family day, and I said, how come I didn't have to go to a rehab or detox or any of that to get clean? And this guy said to me, because you did what we call hitting a high bottom.
Mm,
And so, I mean, it was just luck.
yeah.
It was just
I was literally gonna say that. Yeah.
It was just luck, and I
Yeah.
was in my 30s when I, finally said no,
Yeah.
and, there's no question, yeah, that it happens faster, that there's 4 stages,
Yeah.
right? There's 4 stages. When I did that test in the book, that said, "Are you an alcoholic?" There was no questions about how much you drank.
Mm.
The questions were questions like, "Would you go to a social function where there's no alcohol?" I'm thinking, "Yeah, no. Why
Do
would you do that?"
those exist? Yeah, no, I remember those
Yeah,
thoughts too. Yeah,
yeah,
like,
exactly. Or do you design your activities around your alcohol? And I just when I thought about that, I thought, like, if I was flying my mom in from the other side of the country to visit me, I'd make sure her flight got in before 4 o'clock.
mm,
Right? So that because I wouldn't be able to drive at 7 or 8 at night, because even if
yeah.
I just had a few drinks, I'd have a few drinks. And so yeah, and then a couple of years later, I thought, "Oh, I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I haven't had anything for a couple of years. I think I'll redo that test and it'll tell me I'm no longer an alcoholic." So I redid the test and I scored higher. I scored further into the disease. And
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, and the more I learned about it, the more I learned it's because the cloud lifted. I wasn't
Oh,
minimizing anymore.
yeah,
I now knew exactly what I had done and what I was up to,
yeah. Oh my gosh.
right?
See, so for me, this is where I thought you were gonna go. I remember having 1,000 times being like, "Oh, I haven't drank for a long time. Like, I'm not an alcoholic anymore. Like, I'm all better. I'm gonna drink again because I can do it normal now, and everything's gonna be fine." And then, like, there I would be yet again. So I should have just taken another test
No,
instead
no,
of just continuing to
I went your route quite a few times
oh, did
too.
you? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, once after 5 years, like, it was
Oh,
like,
yeah,
to
been there.
some
Yeah.
of us, it takes a while to kick in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the lesson to learn again and again.
Mhm.
Um, so really like you were able to stop and find recovery and then help your son through rehab and then him come out on the other side. And then
Yeah,
I
he didn't
mean,
come out till years later.
yeah, yeah, which
That
is so
he did
typical.
yeah, yeah, and it was and so but there's a chapter in my book, and there's a song I wrote called Wings. Like, I
Mm,
really have a soft spot in my heart for the loved ones,
yeah.
and this is going all the way back to what you said about forgiving yourself,
Yeah.
right? So, because I did some damage along the route, and then you get all these loved ones of addicts who what could I have done differently? Like, sometimes they didn't even do anything, right?
Yeah.
I had somebody on a podcast interviewing me once and said, "How did you ever forgive yourself for what you did to your son?" I was like, "That's quite the question." But I was doing the best I could at that time, and so were you. When you were in active addiction and you were screwing up and making mistakes and doing damage, you were doing the best you could. That was what you knew then.
Mhm.
And so, forgiving ourselves, there's nothing to forgive, right?
Mm.
We screwed up. That's it. That's all. And it's today that matters and your future. And
Yeah.
just don't screw up again. And
Yeah.
so, like, to me, that's the forgiveness part. For anyone listening that's gonna go listen to the song Wings, it's very emotional. Make sure you have a
Yeah.
Kleenex, make sure you're in the right state of mind, especially if you have a loved one that's in addiction, because
Mm.
it's an emotional song. But what I'm trying to do is give all the family members and all the loved ones of the addicts permission to be happy. You're living a
Mm.
parallel life. You've got somebody that you love that's struggling and they're choosing a high risk lifestyle. You got no control over that. And
Mm.
so you can still be happy. You can still go enjoy yourself. Heck, if you stay strong and don't do the enabling, the codependency, put your boundaries in place. You stay strong, you stay happy. When your loved one's ready to get help, you can be their advocate. You can get
Yeah.
in there. You can find them the rehab. You can work with them. But
Yeah.
if you let them take you down by
Mhm.
by getting consumed with what's happening to them, that doesn't make sense for either of you.
So
And that's what this song's all about. You can still laugh and dance and enjoy yourself and enjoy your life, even when you have a loved one that's struggling. And I don't care whether or not you have no idea how they became an addict, or you have a pretty good idea how they became an addict like me. And so that doesn't matter. That's not what this is all about.
yeah.
Right? I even had somebody say to me, "Gail, I listened to your song and I actually transferred it to my mom." My mom's in a home and she's got Alzheimer's or dementia,
Mhm.
and she's really mean to me. She hates me, and when I go visit her every day, she treats me awful or she doesn't remember me, one of the 2. And she said, "And I've been leaving there and being all stressed out and getting all this anxiety, and all of a sudden from I reading your book, it was like the context shift, and it was like, "Wait a minute, why am I so miserable?"
Yeah.
She's going through this, and I'm on a parallel journey with her, and I don't want to abandon her, but I
Mm.
could still have fun with my children and my grandchildren and my husband and enjoy my life. And I think that's the really important message, is that we've got to understand what we can control, what we can't.
Mhm.
Again, it's a curveball, and it's how we deal with it. And yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and I think, I've heard people say, and I continue to repeat it, and I probably should find out who said it first so I can credit them, but that, that taking care of yourself and like finding joy in your life is the ultimate act of service.
Yeah.
Because like, if she is not able to, I mean, this applies to everyone, but with your friend and the mother, like if she goes home and can't be present for her family and, just lets her life fall apart, like that's not what that doesn't help your mother, and that also is not what like inside that what that person would ever want. And it just, now lots of people are unhappy, and instead of just this one. And it's just, the more my husband, when we were going through my addiction, and we actually had an interview, Bryce interviewed he and I on this podcast ages ago. And we talked about that, how like he continued living his life. He was there and he showed up for me, and it was hard. But also, over and over again, when I would be in the absolute thick of it, he would still watch the Yankees game that he
Yeah.
wanted to watch. He
Yeah.
would still, spend Christmas with his family, if I, whether or not I could contribute to that experience. And like, that was such a light, like that, to be able to see that it was possible for a person. Because I had in my head that there was just no way to do life was just impossible. Survival was the only thing that I could do, and that was only way I could do that was with alcohol. And to see him just do the opposite of that was like this little ray of hope that those cracks continued to like let light in over time, because he didn't lay down and die next to me. That wouldn't have helped me. Him living his life is what allowed him to continue to reach back, and me finally to have a hand to be able to take and come into that light with him. And man, I don't know if I would have been able to do that if our roles had been reversed. And I'm just eternally grateful. And whenever people come to me, because that's the question that I get more than anything, is like, what do I do? How do I help? Or what am I doing wrong when it comes to my family member who's struggling with this? And that's the thing I always say. It's like, you got to do what's right for you. Like, you got to take care of you, because it's not even just because you can't pour from an empty cup. It's also like, because you just have to, because you owe it to yourself and humanity to like find joy in your life. That's like what we're here for.
And I always say self-care is not selfish.
Hell no.
Right?
Yeah.
Self-care, we need the self-care in order to,
Yeah.
and once those loved ones even understand that whole getting caught up in that drama and that whole codependency and enabling thing isn't helping the addict. They're doing it
Mhm.
because they think they're helping the addict.
Right. Of
I
course.
mean, I remember once thinking, "Oh, yes, I have to drive my son to his dealer to buy his drugs because if I don't drive him, he might steal a car." Like, you wanna understand what enabling is. I got I got it. And the other thing, because a lot of people are still like, woesy me, "Poor me. Oh, I did this because all these things happened to me, or I haven't been able to get out of it," or my answer always when somebody wants to vent is, "It's okay to vent, to get it off your chest, and then it's gone. Like,
Yeah.
that's it, that's all. And if you really need to move on and you're not, go help somebody. Go do your act of kindness, and I don't care what your act of kindness is. Go feed somebody at a soup kitchen or, buy the coffee for the people behind you. Just do an act of kindness because then you get the giver's high. You
Oh,
create your
yeah.
dopamine. You don't need drugs. It's a natural high, and that works a lot to get people, rolling out of their minds.
Oh, it's so true. Gosh, I had a friend yesterday he called and I was in the middle of something, so I didn't answer. And he left me this like 3-minute voicemail just telling me how grateful he was to have me as a friend. Like, it was one of the, like, you don't have to call me back, right? And I pay that for, I was like, I want to do that for somebody because it felt so good, so
Right.
I did that. And like,
Right.
honestly, it was a thing I didn't even know I needed, not only to receive it, but to give it. And it just can be something as small as that, just sending somebody a message or calling them and being like, hey, you're really great. I really
Oh,
feel
yeah.
lucky to have you, like, oh my God, it's just, yeah,
I know the giving is huge,
it
right?
is.
People sometimes don't realize that they get as much out of giving as the person that's receiving.
Oh, it's
The
so
giving
true.
is just huge. And also you can have like funny you use the expression pay it forward because I've seen this too. You go to the coffee place drive-through and you say, "I'm gonna buy for the car behind me." And so the car behind me gets to the window and says, "Oh, isn't that special? I'm gonna buy for the car behind me." And everybody gets this smile on their face, and,
Yeah.
it just so cool that it can just, keep going like that.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. And I have to make this plug just because I've been in the service industry and I have a lot of friends who are. You can also just live a gigantic tip for the person that is serving your
Absolutely.
coffee. And that is a great way to do it too. Yeah, there's just so many ways we can take care of each other. And in a world, I think that can feel incredibly overwhelming, I guess, period. But also right now, there's just so much and it can feel like, oh my God, there's nothing that I can do in any way. It's, I always come back to the starfish story. That's like my little, I'm a yoga teacher and my brand has always been Starfish Yoga because of the starfish story. Are you familiar with that?
No,
The starfish?
go ahead.
No? Oh yeah. I love being able to tell it. It's people who listen to the podcast have heard it before, so I'm sorry, but also not. There was a little boy, and I don't know why it's a little boy and an old man, but I'm just going to stay with it. Okay, I'm going to tell it anyway, though. So I have it right in front of me, too. It's always there. Where this little boy is like picking things up and throwing them in the ocean. And a man, the tide is out, by the way. And this man sees him and he realizes that he's picking up starfish that have been stranded and throwing them in the ocean. And the man's like, what are you doing, kiddo? And he's like, well, there's just, they're going to die if I don't get them back in the water. And he's like, there are miles of beach and thousands of starfish, and there is no way you can make a difference. And he picked up one more and threw it in the ocean. He said it made a difference to that one. And like, we just tend to look at the whole beach and the miles and miles. And it's like, no, you've got, there's something in your hand that you can make a difference to. And it doesn't have to be the whole ocean or the whole beach. It can just be like, Gail, I'm so grateful for you that you're here. And like that, I just am, and like, I can't solve the world right now, but I can be so here with you and just be so glad that you're here and tell you that. And like, what a gift that is to each other. I feel great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love your story. I had heard it before, but every time I hear it, it's so like I say that with my book and my stage work and everything. I say,
Mhm.
if I could help one person
Yeah.
have a better life or go into recovery or go after like what I have noticed, and I've listened to your podcast before, and I was hearing something Bryce was saying about in the rooms. And what I have noticed with some people is they get stuck into the first year of recovery
Mhm.
in that state, right? So they're
Yeah.
and I say, go to the next level of your life. Go to the next level of your life. You don't have to stay in that spot. The sky's the limit. Just,
Yeah.
keep reinventing yourself, keep getting to that next level because you deserve it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's an act of service. Like, we need you. We need you in this world in all of your seasons, and every single step you take forward is another version of you that wasn't here before, and it wouldn't be the same without you.
I heard this on another podcast and I stole it. I come from a place of healed scars and not open wounds.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's so like it is so me. And I think like a lot of people that still have the open wounds, I say,
Yeah.
keep going because they heal. They do heal. You do get to move on from this.
And look to the people with scars, because there's so many of
Mhm.
us. Like, I feel like we walk around with our wounds thinking, I'm the only one who has this and it's impossible. And then you see someone with a scar and it's like, oh,
Right.
it's possible. It
Yeah.
heals.
Yeah.
And
We
that's the
can move
beautiful
on.
part.
We can
Yeah.
move on.
You can. Oh my gosh. Well, Gail, I feel like I could talk to you forever because I want to just talk to you forever. But because I know we have so many starfish to touch and put into the ocean, tell our wonderful listeners how they can find all of your things. I know we can get your book and Amazon, and I'm sure we can find your music wherever music is, but how can they get in touch with you, getting all the
The
stuff?
easiest way is just to go to my website,
Okay.
which is gailtaylormusic.com,
Mm-hmm.
and Gail is spelled Gail. Because if you go there, then you can find your way to, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, but if you're just wanting to go and buy the book, just go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and that'll get you to that.
Look for
I
the
want to show
curveball.
you the cover because
Oh, yay!
I'm really excited about this design that I ended up with. Wait till you see it. Look at the butterfly.
Oh, it's so
It's got a
beautiful. It's
treble
got
clef
music.
and treble clef and a bass clef inside of the butterfly.
That is beautiful.
Isn't that
I
cool?
love it so
Uh,
much.
Me
Ugh.
too.
And butterflies. I mean, gosh, I feel like our metaphor game is strong here on Rise, Recover, Live. But the whole, like, they go into the cocoon, the caterpillars, and turn into literal mush and then come out as a friggin' butterfly. Like, holy,
Reinventing themselves
I know, from mush. Yeah, it's
from
amazing.
mush,
From
which would
mush.
what we were.
Oh my God, I've been mush 1,000 times. Yeah, I think, yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's so true. All right. So we're going to go to your website and read your book, and we're going to listen to your music and
Thank
just
you.
be inspired by all the things. I actually did look at your website, and I just love the words that people say about you on there. And I know, we all put testimonials out, but like, those are really beautiful. Those like heartfelt words that people are saying about how you've touched their lives. And it's amazing.
Thank you. And yeah, if you do read my book, go to Amazon and do a review. Because
Yeah.
this thing, because my book's only been out for a couple of months, but they have this thing where they want 50 reviews before they start showing your book to other people.
Huh.
And I think I'm at about 13. So anyone listening that's going to read the book, go give me a review.
All right. I think we're at about 500 downloads a week. So I feel like we can get to that 50.
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's do it, team. Well, amazing. Well, I'm so glad that you are here. And because Bryce will want me to have asked the question, I almost forgot. If you could go back in time to a version of Gail, this was me pulling the curtains back. That was that weird little thing I just did. What might you say to a previous version of you?
Yeah, so I've been asked this question before, and my biggest challenge with it is that I wouldn't do anything differently because I wouldn't be where I am right now if I had done anything differently, right?
Mhm.
So if I was going back to that younger person, or if I was talking to somebody that was in their 20s now, I would say you got this, right?
Mm.
Believe in yourself, you got this. You can get through this. And I think that's the biggest message, because I think that's a lot of the challenges that I had and that others have, is that it trying to get out of it doesn't seem doable,
Yeah.
right? And so that would be the only message that I could do, is to say, you got this. You can move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, you're also just living proof that like that is the case if you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or your 50s or your 60s, like, and then everything on either side of those decades, because yeah,
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't
Ageism
matter.
is the stupidest word I ever
Oh my
heard.
God. I, yeah, every year that I get older, I'm more me and I'm so excited about it. And yeah, just the best
Exactly.
is
I'm
yet to
I'm
come.
gonna turn 70 on my next birthday, and I'm gonna have a rock and roll theme party.
Yes. I love it. I love it. That's amazing.
Maybe I'll go. I listened to one of your guests, Chris, I think his name was, on all the non-alcoholic drinks and maybe I'll go look at some of them and design my party around it.
Oh my
We'll
gosh.
have live music and mocktails.
You should. Oh my God. We've had people on here that do like silent discos and like there's just so many cool things.
Uh,
I fully approve of all of these messages. Well, happy early birthday for when that is.
Thank you.
It's so exciting. Amazing. Well, thank you for being here, for spending this time with me, for inspiring me and for inspiring so many people. And yeah, I can't wait to read your book because I'm definitely going to go and pick up a copy. And yeah, for everyone listening, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up week after week. We would have these conversations. These are so much fun to have. And I always say when we start, like, the thing I love about this podcast is we have conversations we would have even if we weren't recording, but we wouldn't be able to. Like the fact that I get to sit in this seat with you is because we have this podcast and because we have people listening. People that listen are the ones that come on and talk to us. And I can't believe how lucky I am.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.